Ever wonder about how to start homeschooling? This is Beyond the Lesson Plan. I'm Erin.
And I'm Laura.
And we're going to dive into the basics today. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What's our topic today, Erin?
Homeschooling 101.
The basics. How to start, why to start, when to start.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go.
So if someone came up to you and was like, I'm really interested in homeschooling, what would be the first thing that you would recommend to them?
Are they already in school or are they just starting?
Let's say they're already in school.
Okay. If they're already in school, they would definitely have to withdraw.
Okay.
So they have to write a letter and send it to the administration. And they would need to let them know that they are no longer going to be attending that school.
Why do they need to do that?
Paper trail, because the school will no longer get funding for them.
Yeah.
They don't want to get a truancy.
That's the biggest thing I've heard, because I think according to Michigan, you don't need to inform anybody that you're homeschooling. But I think, so every state's going to be different also, right?
Correct.
But here in Michigan, it says that you don't need to let anybody know. But I'm thinking that that's more for someone who has not even enrolled their child in any kind of school yet. If they're already going to school and you just pull them, the school's going to be concerned.
They're going to notice.
Yeah.
They're going to notice. Johnny hasn't been here for a month now. Where in the world?
And the truancy officers will come to the door.
That's what I hear. But then in the past, when we've done these workshops or in person, we've had a lot of teachers come. It's amazing how many teachers pull their kids to homeschool them. But it's because they're boots on the ground and they are seeing what's going on in the schools. But regardless, they have told me in the past that there is not an actual truancy officer out there in the real world. They threaten, but they don't have the staff, the funding, or anything to actually follow through with that. Maybe they've gotten that underway in the last few years, but as far as I know, I don't know if they would just report you to CPS maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who the phantom truancy officers really are.
Okay.
Michigan's so lax, but I still think it's good to do a withdrawal letter. Mm-hmm. You can send it into your child's school, to the school secretary, email it, you can mail it, but definitely keep a record for yourself as to when you sent it. Mm-hmm. I guess that's probably why email is the preferred method, because you have record of your sending it.
Yeah.
But even if you take it and drop it off and have them sign for it, just some way that you have proof that you have withdrawn them from the public school.
I would also suggest really looking at your state's rules, because schools tend to get on a little power trip.
Yes.
And they'll try to bully you, ask you what curriculum you're using, or tell you, you have to fill out this form if you're going to homeschool. And those may not actually be laws.
And you got to remember that they're losing thousands of dollars per pupil.
Yes.
So that's a lot of money for them to lose. And so they feel like they have skin in the game to keep you there.
Yeah. Yeah,
for sure. Like you said, it can be a power trip. The best place to go to the HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, to check your state. They are an excellent group that makes sure that everybody's compliant and that the states aren't infringing on our homeschooling rights.
You can pay to be a member of HSLDA. It's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Correct.
So you can pay to be a part of that. And if you do come up against anything, they'll be there to support you. It's a group of lawyers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not sure what their rate is right now to join, but they do a lifetime membership. I think that's right around $1,000. And I think a yearly is between the $50 to $100 range. I don't think it's super expensive, but if you're going to be homeschooling for 20 years, it might be worth going with the lifetime membership.
Because some of us do homeschool for 20 years.
Yes, exactly.
I was going to check the price, but
Oh, let me
Sorry.
see. I know if you're a part of a co-op and stuff, you can get a group rate and you can get a discount.
ooh,
Let me check that out. Autocorrect bites again. All right, let's see.
just really getting to know
Oh,
what
yes.
is required. Like what subjects, is there a certain amount of days that you need to homeschool? Some states require that you are part of an umbrella school, which could be a church, it could be a different co-op, it could be, I'm not really familiar with what other options there are, but they do have where you're required to be under some kind of entity, right?
Correct. And then some of them require you to keep a portfolio and to get it certified or looked at by a certified teacher twice a year, once a year. There's always slight workarounds from what I hear on those kind of things, but there are definitely many more requirements in other states. I think New York is one that you have to have a certified teacher look at your stuff or be an umbrella type school. My sister in South Carolina had an umbrella school. So, I mean, even some of the most conservative states have harder rules than we have. I just looked up the HSLDA. So to pay yearly, it's $150. To pay monthly is $15. And a lifetime membership, if I can speak, is $1,500. Just to give you an idea of what that is.
So if you're going to be in the homeschooling game for the long haul.
The long haul, yes. It should be a legacy membership, I think, that should pass on from generation to generation. So, if you were to go to Michigan and want to know maybe what graduation requirements are, as homeschoolers and being in such a, I don't want to say lackadaisical state, but a hands-off state maybe is the better term, you can find out what the Michigan public education requirements are. If you are a parent who's maybe very concerned that your child is getting in all of the requirements that they would have at a public school. Michigan.gov/documents. I can put that in the show notes, but there's a link that you can go to and it will give you the breakdown of how many math credits, how many science credits, how many English credits, all that kind of stuff. In Michigan, how we get to those credits is up to us. But it's, if you are one of those people that wants to make sure that you're Xing all the boxes, getting your ducks in a row, that is a good resource to kind of help you out. But Michigan is very lenient, but it still requires these subjects to be taught. Reading, spelling, mathematics, science, history, civics, literature, writing, and grammar. How you get there is up to you. And not every subject has to be taught every day. You can do a semester of writing and a semester of grammar, or a month of writing, a month of grammar. There's, 9 subjects to cram into a day would be crazy.
Yeah,
So,
like I think some people refer to that as like block scheduling.
Yeah.
Like where they'll do science all one semester and get it all in, right? And
Yes.
then move on to maybe history the next semester.
right. Or they do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they do history and language and
Yeah.
spelling, and then Tuesday, Thursday, they do the others.
Yes.
It's up to you how you do that. In Michigan, we're also required to use an organized educational program. So what does that mean?
Does that mean open box curriculum? Does that mean something that's already laid out for you? Does that mean you can create your own?
An organized educational program would be a thought-out plan and process. It does not mean that you have to use a box curriculum. It does not mean that you have to adhere to a certain outline. Your plan, your process, but you need to have a plan and a process. And so a plan and a process would be like benchmarks and using their language public school language to kind of define it would be a little different. Many families choose to follow Michigan graduation requirements, so there's no questions regarding their transcripts or diploma. We will get into transcripts, diploma, and all that in another episode. We will not cover that here. That is too deep. But in Michigan, like we said, we're very lucky. No portfolio, no standardized testing. We write our diplomas. We write our transcripts.
Yeah. And a note about transcripts, when I was doing research for ours, state, no county, no city, there's no standard of transcripts. So you don't need to worry about what does my transcript need to look like, because no matter where you're at in the United States, it's going to look different from the next city over.
Right.
There's no standard transcript. I just thought that was interesting.
Again, you can Google those.
Yeah.
You can definitely Google how to make a transcript.
Yeah.
And there's free PDFs and all that kind of stuff to help you out with that. How did you do record keeping for your family?
So I just had a planner, and every year, some of the curriculums that I used, they had, a teacher manual. So I would use that, highlight what we did, circle what we did, just make notes on there. So I have a lot of that.
Do you still keep all your records?
Well, I do have some because it's a purge. It's a slow process.
It's hard to purge that stuff.
It is. What if I need this?
Yeah.
What if my grandbabies need this?
Exactly.
But so I do have some of it, but I am not in fear of keeping it in case, the authorities come knocking at my door and say, how did you homeschool your kids?
Yeah, I used to know people that had a tote for every year or every child every year. And I always thought, where do you store that after 18 years? That's just
And
a
7
ton.
children.
Yes, exactly. I don't have that kind of storage unit that I want to pay for. I did very similar to you. I have computer documents we had planners that we did up until pretty much high school. I think after that they kind of did their own record keeping, but
I think I was using the printouts that you had. You
Yeah.
gave me a couple. We did use those for a while too.
yeah. So we would write in our scores and stuff like that. So they could keep that binder, but at the end of the year, I threw it away.
Yeah.
I don't have very much left. I don't have very much left at all. So, but a lot of people do keep their planner pages, workbooks, textbooks, especially if you're passing them down. There's no reason not to, but your high school transcripts and records, they should be saved. If your kid decides to ever go to college, they'll need it. They're just something that I have. I will always have that. Just kind of like having a resume. I always have a transcript.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those documents you just keep hang on to.
Yeah.
That, your social security card, your birth certificate.
Transcripts.
Yeah, transcripts. There you go. So if you had someone come to you, how would you explain deschooling?
So deschooling wasn't really a word that I learned until after we had pulled the kids out. But deschooling is basically when you pull your children out of school, they've been in the public school system for a period of time. Deschooling is unlearning public school life, scheduling. If you're in that mindset, school has to be done from 7 o'clock a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. We have to do every single subject. It has to be 1 hour of each subject. It's hard to get out of that mindset. So deschooling is just creating new routines and schedules at home that support learning, but trying to get out of the public school mindset. That's how I would describe it.
That's good. I think I agree. I think there's also the finding your role as mom, because your kids have never looked at you as teacher. Mm-hmm. So I think that becomes a whole new authority position that you have to establish, because if they don't have to get up out of bed, they're not going to. Or they're going to be off doing whatever that they want to do instead of doing school. And there is an element of having to do school.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it as fun as you can, but there's still math is math.
Yeah. But do we do math during deschooling?
No. No. So what does it look like? A lot of people say it's reading books, playing games, going on field trips, cooking together.
Nature walks.
Yes. No presentations, no rubrics, which when I was going to school, we didn't have rubrics. So that one, somebody actually that went to public school actually had to show me that because I didn't know what that was. No reports. Maybe lots of, reading, and maybe they tell you what they're reading, but it's not a handwritten, submitted, old-fashioned book report.
Yeah.
Maybe you establish your routine meal times, bedtimes, chore training, work on character, obedience, especially if they're very young. Everything that I always hear about is if they pull their kids out in high school, the kids always want to go back. And I don't know, the deschooling, I feel like you have to fill those, you have to find your community in that role. Otherwise, they're going to be lone wolves and they're going to be so bored. And so I think you do have to take some time to find your community in that deschooling process. Maybe it's not a co-op, maybe it's a sports team, maybe it's a music program. But at least in our area, you can pretty much find all of that for a high school level, any level.
Yeah.
But I think that's important to find as well.
I've also seen online, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but like for every year that your children have been in public school, you use 1 month to deschool. So if they've been in public school 5 years, you deschool 5 months. Which seems like it seems like a lot.
It seems like a long time. Yes. I don't know. I've heard months and I've heard weeks.
Okay.
Probably if it were me, I might go weeks.
Yeah.
Because, field trips, if you're doing all field trips for any kind of educational, that gets pricey.
Yeah.
So, library trips, you can find cheaper things to do, but I think do you think everybody at this point kind of knows somebody that homeschools?
Yeah, probably.
That even if it's not your own age kids, that you would be able to hey, tell me how you do that, how do you find your curriculum, all of that kind of stuff to find your people to kind of plug into. You do have to understand that your school day will most likely be half the time of public school. A fraction of a time, yeah. If you're in school normally for 8 hours, 4 hours is probably pretty tops. You're not...
And there's no homework.
Right.
There might be a little bit, but not really. There's really not homework.
No. There would be an assignment, and if you didn't get it done, you might have to finish it up after you're done with your other stuff so that mom can go do other things. It's not just... But there was never... After dinner, you're going to sit down and do your homework. That was never a thing. You also have to understand what is realistic to expect at different stages and ages. So your kindergarten doing school might be an hour and a half a day.
And it's a lot of play.
Yeah. You're making games and you're cutting and you're pasting and you're doing, so it might take a little longer, but it's not going to be near what a kindergarten program looks like.
Yeah.
And then your high school, some days might be longer than 4 hours, or, just depends on their subject, if they're catching on quick, if they need to watch videos, if they're in live classes, all of that. I know some homeschooling families that do very rigorous programs and their kids can be in school longer than a public school day. But that's their choice. That's their family's choice. So you have to also remember that your third grader and your kindergartner are not going to learn at the same rate. They can learn a lot of the subjects together, but different learning styles, different temperaments, all of that will come into play when it comes to how long school takes them. Mm-hmm. Some kids are just going to butt heads no matter what, and they're going to give you a hard time. So their day's going to be longer. And then other days you might just have the kid that's just like, hey, let's get this done. I want to go play.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention about homeschooling high school, that if you're going to just try it for a year and you're thinking you're going to go back to public school, I would make sure you use an accredited program, whether it be computer online program, like I don't know if it's My Academy or Michigan Academy. I don't know. There's several options out there these days. But if you do your own program and then you say, okay, we're just going to do our freshman year and then we're going to go back and we're going to put you back in school so you can play football or whatever, the public school does not have to take your credits unless they're from an accredited program. So be careful with trying to pull out, put in your kids. The public school can give you a hard time.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want that. What kind of resources would you use to help a new parent? What book would you recommend?
Well, when I first started kind of looking into our homeschool journey, I found a video online. I think her name is Sonia Schaefer. And she talks about the different styles of homeschooling. And she just does a very quick run through on, unit studies. What is a unit study? What is classical education? What is the traditional education? That was very helpful for me.
That's a good video.
It is a good video.
I recommend that all the time.
Yeah.
It's called The 5 Flavors of Homeschooling. You can find it on YouTube, but we'll also make sure it's linked in our show notes. There's some other books that I know many people just loved. Some people are book readers, some people are YouTuber learners, but some of the books that I've heard that really help people understand homeschooling is How They Learn by Cynthia Tobias, The Well-Trained Child by Susan Wise Bauer, I think, The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart, and Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment. There's several of those that are really good resources, and just kind of set your mind at ease that you're not going to screw them up. You're going to get through this. But you also need to realize you don't need to recreate school at home. Where do you do school? Where did you guys do school?
Well, we did school at the table sometimes. We did school in our bedrooms. We did school at Big B Coffee. We did school at the park. You can do school anywhere.
Yes. We started out when we started with the desks and the whole classroom and the things up around the ceiling, all the ABCs up around the ceiling, and we tried to recreate the kindergarten classroom, so to speak. And then we morphed over the years to kitchen table with just one little bookcase for all of our stuff. And then we morphed to, hey, you're laying on the floor doing a puzzle. Like, it just depended. It didn't matter at some point. We just did what we did. I mean, there was a lot of school that happened out in the shed, learning their craft of the time.
Did you have a preference on, did you think that one place of learning was better than another?
I didn't mind history or reading subjects on the living room couch, but like math and that sort of thing, they either stood and did it on the whiteboard because they like to use the whiteboard, or we did it at the kitchen table just because then it was easy to sit next to each other.
Yeah.
It was just, we can lay the books out flat and kind of see. Then they started using teaching textbooks, and so then they had a computer and they had a book and they had a notebook, and it was just a lot. So they needed to spread.
Yeah.
So it became kind of the kitchen table realm. But grammar, I didn't care the rest of the subjects. It was kind of do it wherever you can. But did you do every subject every day?
No.
No.
No, we tried. It's stressful. It was stressful for me to do it that way. We used My Father's World for a long time, and it's a great curriculum, but you're hitting so many different books, and it could just be little blips out of 15 different books. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to juggle. I love it. I mean, I learned so much right along with them. It's beautiful. It's beautifully written and designed. But, you know, it starts to get stressful sometimes. So you got to say, okay, so we'll do all of this today, and maybe tomorrow we'll hit, we'll do all like the literature, English, you know, today. Tomorrow we'll do science on this subject. So
That's how we got eventually to do it, because we used Mystery of History for history. And so we ended up kind of doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday for history, or Tuesday, Thursday, just depending, because there was a shorter amount of lessons. It didn't take that long, but it was very thorough, and we could do a documentary maybe in once a week. Or we did math every day. We did English every day. And I think we kind of rotated history and science. Spelling we did in the younger years. We didn't do that as we got older. But grammar, literature, I think we probably hit most every day.
I forgot about spelling.
Yeah. What role did your husband play in your schooling?
Not a lot. It was not, just kind of hands off. Yeah. Didn't do a lot.
My husband was home often because he had a flexible schedule. So he was more of a driver of doing school to look like school.
Yeah.
He was much more, well, they need to be at the table or they need to be here. And I'm like, they're learning, just leave them alone. But we got through that. And by the time Levi was done, we were like, okay.
Yeah.
But he would, he'd input if he had something to say, such as, you know, maybe we're reading about some history topic and he'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And he would input. But most times he did not have a huge input as to what we used or how we got there. Seems to have worked out okay so far.
Yeah.
They're all functioning adults.
That's one of the goals.
Yes, yes. What is important in your family for your kids to know, prioritize, and then work towards teaching them that? So if your husband does want to be, I know some families, like the husband teaches science because he loves science. And so they do it after dinner. There's no wrong or right way.
Yeah. It's also important to know, like, let's say you have two people working. You know, the school doesn't have to start in the morning. You can do school evenings and weekends.
Correct.
You know, these are hard things to, like, unlearn. That's probably part of the deschooling process. Learning happens anytime, anywhere, forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. There was so much in history that I learned
Yeah.
just by reading it to my kids.
Yeah.
That it's, you know, working moms can make it work. Is it easy? No.
No, even single moms.
Yes. Yes.
That's another thing I see a lot online is single moms wanting to homeschool but don't know how to start. And I don't know, you really have to look at who is your support system. Who can who can watch who's watching the kids now while you're working? They're probably in school.
Correct.
Right?
And that's a tough transition because it's, you know, daycares don't take kids that are school age.
Yeah.
So finding that grandma that will watch them while you're at work so that you can homeschool them when you get home.
Yeah.
Or, the drop-off programs that help with that sort of thing. And maybe the drop-off program, they're actually learning while they're there. So maybe, I mean, there's co-ops in our area that are core co-ops that will teach them math for you, or hybrid programs. Where there's a will, there's a way, but it's going to take some research to find it. Definitely.
Yeah.
We've had some very persistent moms, though, that have really done a great job that have been single moms. And it's just a matter of that's what they wanted for their family. And
Yeah.
was a target and a goal. And they made it happen. So curriculum, we're not going to go into this super much because we want to do a later episode on this, but we'll kind of highlight some resources and some styles. Like we've already referenced the 5 flavors of homeschooling. That's an excellent video. Everybody always recommends Kathy Duffy's Homeschool Picks. Check it out at the library. I don't know that you need to own your own copy unless you, because it does change. I know the resources that are out there now are not the same resources that I had when I started. So your library might be a good resource for that one. There's always new things coming out. And once you kind of get into homeschooling and you find your community, you can borrow, you can say, hey, do you use that? Can I look at it? See if I like it, see if it will work for us. You don't have to.
And you can mix and match.
Yes.
You know, you may really like My Father's World, their science program, but you really like IEW. I don't remember My Father's World using IEW. So you can mix and match. You can get things at a used curriculum sale.
Yep.
I feel like a lot of people hodgepodge it. Eclectic.
Yes. I think a lot of people start with one and then they're like, oh, well, they did a really good job in this topic, maybe science, and I really love their science, but their math is lacking. And I think it's hard to find an overall curriculum that is just your favorite in every topic or subject, whichever. Learning styles. Let's kind of touch on that a little bit. What are the different learning styles?
Really familiar with the different learning styles.
Well, there's kinetic,
Yes.
which is hands-on learning. There's audio learning, so maybe they learn best by listening. Then there's audio, kinetic, visual learners, where they learn best by seeing what they are doing. It, you know, like you show them and then they can do it. And then I'm trying to think of the last one. I think there's 4.
I never did any kind of like testing with the kids to see what their best learning style was. Isn't it terrible? We just did it.
Well, I think it makes a difference too, as for you as the teacher of your learning style, because if you're an audio learner and you're trying to teach kinetically, you might struggle a little bit. I don't know.
Well, that's very interesting because your children can learn in a very different learning style than you. And even with, let's say, like one of the quote flavors of homeschooling might be unit studies.
That books, yes.
So that's like a lot of cutting and pasting. And if that stuff drives you nuts as a adult or a teacher, you're going to struggle with it. You know,
Correct.
You're going to hate it.
Yes.
So finding the balance between how your kids are learning and how you can teach and learn, you know.
Yes. So, okay, so I looked it up, but a visual learner is, they prefer to learn through images, diagrams, and spatial understanding. An auditory learner grasps information better through listening to spoken words, sound, and music. It's kinetic, but this says, what does that say? Kinesthetic?
Kinesthetic?
Kinesthetic.
I don't know. We'd have to plug it into a pronunciation.
We'll tell you how to spell it. No. They learn best through hands-on activities, physical movement, and experimenting. Now, I would say most boys are this type of learner. Then there's reading, writing learners. Excels when interacting with text to comprehend and retain information. I would say that's how school is taught, but I would say most learners are not that way. So that is the 4 types of learning styles. So finding your kids' learning style and your learning style and then learning to mesh those is a definite beneficial thing, because I think it'll just make your day go smoother. Because if you've got, you know, the hands-on learner and you're trying to just bludgeon them with an audiobook. They're going to be like, can I jump on the trampoline and listen to this? Because that will help me out. So it's kind of learning to mesh those worlds. Now, curriculum styles, there's traditional. Mm-hmm. There's maybe, what you would see in the public school or maybe
private
school. Examples of those would be, there's a lot of workbooks, consumables. They're great for the reading, writing learner, but maybe not so much for everybody else unless you're really good at making games or making other things to go along with them. But I would say these are Abeka, BJU Press, Saxon, Rod and Staff.
And those are a lot of the curriculums used in like Christian private schools.
Yes.
And those are probably accredited. So something you'd want to look at if you're planning on sticking your kid back into public school.
You would definitely have to use their, as far as Abeka and BJU, I'm not too familiar with the other two, but those two can be accredited. But if you just buy the workbooks, you have to go through their video program and their live classes and stuff to get the accreditation.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be just picking up their workbook and using it and now you're accredited. So it definitely has a little bit of, trick to it. I'm not familiar with Robinson curriculum, but it always has fascinated me because it's self-directed traditional homeschooling curriculum. It's not textbooks, but it utilizes traditional resources. It's quality literature of the past, one price for all 12 years. So that always kind of intrigued me, but I never really got past that.
Yeah, I don't know really anything about it.
Yeah. I don't even know anybody that's ever used it, but it just always looked so neat. Classical education. You tell us about that.
So what I know about that is nothing.
Liar.
So, well, I really don't know anything about it. I just know do not quote me on any of this, but they take the children's age and their natural development stages, and they work with that. So maybe a kindergarten through first grade, are they like maybe sponges at that age? So you're just force feeding as much information as you possibly can give them. And then maybe the next phase of their life, they're just kind of inquisitive
They call it the trivium.
Okay.
So you have the grammar stage, the dialectic stage, and the rhetoric stage. So you start out with the grammar stage, and it's tons of memorization, facts, absorbing just tons of information, little dates, timelines, all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's ages up to 10. Then the dialectic stage, they go into logical discussion, debate, drawing conclusions. It's supposed to make them very logical, well-rounded. So that may be up to age 12. And then age 13 to 18 is much more rigorous, systematic, persuasive use of language. It's very classic, maybe how Thomas Jefferson education classes would be, or Tapestry of Grace would be this sort of, classical conversations would be this sort of program. And classical conversations, they usually have a community and they meet once a week to do their stage, whatever stage they're in.
Okay.
But then they move on. And maybe it's on a 4-year rotation. Like Mystery of History, it's a 4-year rotation. You use the same book every 4 years. And then you learn about maybe the ancient time period in different stages. So in kindergarten, they're learning, what a ziggurat is. And then in middle school, when they go back around the next 4 years, they learn more in depth on that. Maybe they write a paper on it. And then in high school, maybe they build one, or, it's much more, they write a research paper on it, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it becomes much more in depth as they get older. Unit studies.
Did you ever do any unit studies with the kids?
I think a few. Like I remember doing, like the geography fair, I would consider a unit study. We studied a country and presented a country, and that was, for me, I would consider that one maybe.
Yeah.
But for someone who's doing unit studies, that's their whole focus is one.
Unit studies are great for when you start getting, like, if you're in a traditional program, either like, let's say a Becca, or even doing something like My Father's World or Sunlight, when you just kind of need a break, because you can get unit studies for each holiday. You can get unit studies for the seasons. There's so many. So if you just kind of need to break up the monotony of, every day, unit studies were great for that.
Yes.
Yes.
And it can be a short break.
It could, they have 1 week unit studies, 2 week unit studies. You could do them, probably month long. We never did any month long or really long extended, but they were just good, like, for the holidays or for the seasons.
Yes. And you can make it focused on a subject. Like your son loves sports, and so he wants his math to be about sports.
Yeah.
So you can kind of tailor them, but there's there's just a ton of it. And there's tons of them out there.
Free,
yes.
expensive.
Yes. So many options.
And you even can create your own unit studies, honestly.
Yes. And you can find them. With like Teacher Pay Teacher, there's so many options. It's overwhelming. Then there's Charlotte Mason method.
We did a little bit of Charlotte Mason. I like it. My Father's World is very Charlotte Mason heavy. So basically with Charlotte Mason, you're reading living books, an example of a living book would be like almost like watching the movie Titanic, right? Rose and Jack were not actually passengers on the Titanic, but the story of the Titanic was told through.
So historical fiction.
Yes.
So to speak.
Yeah, something to help you remember what's going on and to become a part of the story, right?
Okay.
So that's some Charlotte Mason. It's also like her thing, like, we're going to read a book. You're not going to write a paper on it, but I want you to give me an oral dictation of what we just read.
Okay.
So because of the writing skills, sometimes it's really frustrating for kids to be writing at that age, or, their motor skills aren't developed. So, but just getting them in the habit of telling things back to you. Mm-hmm. And then once we start developing writing skills, we'll start putting pen to paper.
Okay. Is there a lot of nature stuff
Yeah,
in
a lot
that
of
as
nature
well?
study. Yeah.
Okay. But their claim to fame is that they nurture a love for learning and reinforce good lifelong habits where they're not just memorizing dates and facts that are random. It's got a story to it, or it helps you remember it, but like you said, it's not, this was when this happened and these are the people involved, and that's it.
And she's big with like learning a handicraft, learn something, crocheting, woodworking, doing something with your hands that you could potentially earn money with in the future. Just learning how to use your hands.
Well, did you say a couple examples of that kind of curriculum? 5 in a Row, My Father's World, Sunlight. Definitely, I would say my kids were not huge readers. Like, they did not devour books to read. They enjoyed me reading to them, but I found some of them are so literature focused. Like Sunlight is so literature focused that my kids were just lost in 15 different books because it got to be too much. So that's where we would maybe pick that up for kind of tie in our history with our literature, but we didn't use maybe the other subjects of it because it was just too heavy into reading.
I've heard people say that they've lost their voice.
Yes.
I've heard that.
I've heard some people say they've got 10 readers going on at the same time, and I'm just like, that's
but some people love it.
Yes.
They love it so much.
So that's why there's so many good options, and that's why we ended up being kind of eclectic, because we could pick what worked for us. Unschooling, this one does not fit my personality at all. I cannot do unschooling. But I guess in some ways, if you look at Levi and his pen making and stuff, it kind of would have been unschooling because I don't know how to make a pen and I couldn't show him how to make a pen. Mm-hmm. So he learned on his own. But I don't know how it works in in the real world long term. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it. So you did a lot more unschooling. Your kids are great. So it's not like it didn't work. It's just I don't have that personality to be able to do that.
Well, it's hard because I wouldn't say we were fully committed into unschooling, because there's always in the back of your head, like, you can't, there has to be something going on. Like, I've watched a YouTube video of a family, and they didn't require their children to do anything, but they were learning to read because it became important to them, because they wanted to communicate with their friends gaming. Like, they wanted to be able to read the chat.
This is how I feel like the public school perceives all homeschoolers.
Yes.
I feel like they think we all unschool. Mm-hmm. And I think that's there are good and bad homeschoolers in every type of learning. But I feel like the public school looks at unschooling, and that's where they feel like they really bear down, that homeschoolers don't know anything, even though we test better when we actually test. We're doing well in college. And
I think we're doing better in the workforce.
But I just feel like that is what everybody looks at when they look at public schooling versus homeschooling. They think it's kids just running around and barefoot in a farm somewhere. I don't know. Or child slave labor, and all we have them doing is chores, or I don't know. But I feel like unschooling gets a bad rap in that way, but a lot of times they are learning. It just depends on what their focus is.
Yeah.
And I do think there are some kids that would never learn certain topics if their parents didn't have some direction.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where unschooling matches unit study, and they marry the sports with the,
Yes.
Whatever. But unschooling to me is a little more foreign. It's not been, I guess it's probably always been around, but it's just not something that my personality or my husband, because he's the more of, sit down at the kitchen table and do school, it would not have worked.
So, and I think there's a difference. There's a radical unschooling where there is just absolutely no direction. And then there's like, what do you want to learn today? We're not just going to sit around the house and loaf.
Right.
You're not playing
Right.
games all day.
Right.
So that's where we were more of like,
Okay.
what are we going to learn today? And it wasn't even 100% of the time. It could have been days.
Right.
And then the other days it was like, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going to start learning about, like, our favorite subject, hands down, is probably North Korea.
Yes. But your guys' geography fair was amazing.
So interesting. So, there were times where, okay, what do you want to learn today? And then it was like, okay, no, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Did you use the library a lot?
No, never.
Are you anti-library
I'm not
because of the
anti-library.
propaganda, or do you feel like it's just a...
No, I just wasn't, it wasn't our thing.
Yeah.
It just wasn't our thing. If I bought a lot of books, like on Amazon, I just bought books.
Right.
We didn't do the checkout. I wasn't responsible enough to return the book on time and not get fees. If we have to be completely honest here.
I swear I have a story about that one, because Gabby lost a book. And Gabby was really responsible, so I don't know, it just kind of disappeared. And I ended up paying like $15 for this $2 book. I swear it only cost them $2, but I ended up paying like $15 to replace the library's book. And I think it was like 3 years later, we found it in the garage. It was like, how did it get out here?
Did you return it to get a refund?
No. I think it was pretty well, garage. It was pretty well beat up by then. But it's just, yeah, we tried the library number, but we were not, I don't know, I'd just rather buy them at garage sales or used book sales. I did enjoy that. Or even the friend of the library sales, because it just was easier. Or it was just easier to buy curriculum that had the books with it. And I didn't have to worry about it.
The all-in-one kits.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so schedule. What kind of schedule did you guys use?
So I loved year-round schooling because it did allow us to be a little bit more lackadaisical. And there was, an example of this would be, there's nothing wrong with this if this works for your family, but I know that there's some families at co-op that do school in the morning before co-op, which is insane to me. That's crazy.
Co-op was always school day.
Co-op is school.
Unless they were a little behind and then they had a couple things they might have to do in the morning. But No, co-op with school.
Yeah.
Yep.
So schooling year round let us be a little bit more flexible. And then I noticed when we did do summer break, getting back into the routine of school was very, very, very difficult for us. We just had a really hard time getting back into the groove of things.
Well, and I never schooled year round, but I can see the pros to it, because there's not that review block. You're just always learning, so there's not, okay, we got to go back and review what you did the last month of school so that you can start your new curriculum, so that we're ready to go.
Yeah.
We were school off for the summers. I needed that break. But we did take a couple weeks off at Christmas. We took, we kind of followed, especially once my kids were into OTEC, we did more of the school schedule just because it was, the oldest was doing that at the time. And, it just kind of worked for our family. But we would double up days so that we didn't have to do school maybe on a Friday. We want to go do something fun. Field trips were school days.
Yes.
Co-op days were school days to avoid the review month that what you get when you open up your new curriculum and it's got the month of review because you're starting after summer. If they could pass the first test, we skipped all that review. If they got a B or better or whatever, we were like, okay, you already remember it. We don't need to go backwards. So then maybe we were already 20 lessons in. And we're like, okay, well, if they know it, they don't have to do all those 20 lessons.
Two quick points about that. And also the curriculums, like let's say math, the math curriculum is built in with review at the end of the year too.
Yes.
Right? So that's not necessarily necessary.
Well, and one thing to mention is that public schools never really finish a book.
That's what I was going to say.
They don't do all 170 lessons provided or whatever the number is.
There's like a percentage.
Yeah,
I think it's
they
80%.
No, I don't think it's even that high.
No.
I think it's like 75%. So that's something to kind of plan in your year. If you're I'm going to plan the whole year at one time, plan that out so that maybe you start at lesson 20 or obviously if your child needs the review, that's a great time to do it, but you can maybe do quick, speed up the lessons for the first month or whatever. How much do you think you spent a year? Do you and John have a budget?
No, we didn't actually have a set budget, but the My Father's World curriculum, like all in, oh geez, I don't even remember. You could get different levels of it. So maybe one might be 300, but it included most of the books,
Mm-hmm.
But we did not have a budget. But I would say per year, maybe 500-ish.
Okay.
Did
that include field trips and co-op and all that?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Yeah, I would say with 4, I was probably at $1,500 a year between all the subjects, but not every year either.
Yeah, and you're reusing a lot of your resources.
Yes.
Again, there's so many free resources out there.
Yes, and I think it's getting cheaper to homeschool. Obviously, the extracurriculars can really add up, but those are optional.
Yeah.
Did you use a digital handwritten, no planner? How did you?
I just use a planner. Like I said earlier, we did a lot of planning stuff with the teacher manual, just notes in the teacher manual. I never did any kind of digital. For high school, like I was keeping track on the computer, kind of like to keep track for their transcripts.
Yes.
So that was digital. Just
Okay.
an Excel spreadsheet.
I am very bad at keeping up with a planner.
Yeah.
I guess it's like a diary. I hate, nothing happened today. What do I have to write in my diary? So a planner, I would write very little down, but we would basically just go to the next day's lesson.
Yeah.
So we, my kids had planners that they would write maybe their test scores if we had a test or something down. I used Homeschool SchedTrack for a while. It's kind of outdated. There's a lot better things out there now, but it was free and that's how I did their transcripts. It generated it for me. I was good. But I did not, I don't know, just like you said, just kind of use the next day when we get to the end, we're done, Or when we decide we're done, we're done. What activities did you guys do for homeschooling? Outside, like outside of the home.
Like field trips, co-op. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, in reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did like field trips with co-op. We would go places solo. We did co-op. I don't know.
There's so much now, like park days, homeschool.
Oh, yeah.
Homeschool skate. There's historical conquest, like game competitions out there. A lot of places have a homeschool week. So say Legoland or what's the other one over?
That aquarium.
Yeah, the aquarium, Sea Life Aquarium. Some of the businesses, I don't know if they still have them, but some businesses will do homeschool days like Urban Air. You can buy a membership to go during the day, or Goldfish Swim School used to have homeschool days. I'd have to check and see if they still do any of that, but they used to, and they're fairly inexpensive. I know I know a lot of families do memberships to the zoo, to the museums in the area, and a lot of times those memberships come with reciprocal memberships. So maybe you can go to the Detroit Zoo and the Toledo Zoo for the same membership.
Okay.
So I know a lot of them have those kind of things. So those are always good to check out. Music education. We have an awesome music education program here called OMI. They do a great job. There are Mondays. I mean, your co-ops in the area. A lot of times that same HSLDA will have lists of co-ops in your area if you're looking for those. But pretty much anything, sports groups, there's Upwards,
What is Upwards?
Upwards is a sports program. Local churches usually put it on, and sometimes they'll have basketball, sometimes it'll be soccer, just different programs. And so maybe for the month of February and March, you go once a week to practice, and then games maybe Saturday mornings. So those are good programs. You just kind of got to get plugged in and find out where your local tribe is.
Okay. So, another question that you hear a lot from people who are interested in homeschooling, but they're afraid, is what about socialization?
Oh, boy.
So what would you say to the people who are very worried about their child being socialized?
It's going to take some effort on your part, especially if you have a super social child. I have two very social and two they enjoy it once they're there, but they don't really care to participate if they don't have to. But I think you need to find your group. You are going to have to get on that computer on Facebook and look up local homeschool groups or there's so many pages that are on Facebook that maybe they do field trips and all they do is field trips, park days, all they do is nature school and meet up for hikes. And there's the co-ops that are core based and they meet regularly and they teach science and math, and they're drop-off programs. Or there's co-ops like ours that were elective based and just more built on community. And so our co-op does field trips, team nights. I mean, it becomes more of a social gathering every time we're together.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about learning a hardcore topic, but it's about having fun with that topic. So we might do biology labs, but you're going to dissect. You're not going to sit down and read a chapter.
Yeah.
So it's just different. And I also think that the focus of socialization is overplayed, because in the public school, they're not socialized.
You're not allowed to socialize. You have to
No.
sit down and be quiet.
Right. And who you do socialize is all the people the same age.
Yeah.
And you're kind of taught to fear the adults.
Yeah.
They're your authority and they're going to tell you to sit down and be quiet. Where in
In the homeschooling universe, right?
Yeah.
You're socializing with the waitress. When you're ordering, you're socializing with the people at the grocery store.
Right.
It's a much more realistic. It's interesting because the kids, I see children, and I mean, it's happening with homeschoolers too, I guess, but you see kids who can't order food at a restaurant. They can't go to the deli and ask for a pound of turkey,
Correct.
and I feel like with homeschooling, you're putting your children in these real life situations and they're so comfortable talking to adults. I've heard that so much through our homeschooling journey. Wow, your children know how to speak to an adult,
Correct.
So,
I think that's, yes. The only time I don't see that is when the sibling speaks for the little sibling.
okay, yeah.
That happens.
And there's something also to recognize is, yes, there are weird, unsocialized homeschoolers. There are, but there are even weird public schoolers. Like, there are just people who are not social, and that is okay. They might be socially awkward. They might be shy. They might be timid. It's happening with public school kids, too. I think that that's the biggest thing.
Right. I think most homeschoolers are out and about more than they're home.
Yeah.
And the real life interaction they're getting is equivalent, if not more, than a public school child. And I know I've worked in church Awanas with homeschool kids and with public school kids and private school kids. And most times the homeschool kids are less fearful of me because I'm not than the private and public. It's a strange relationship that the public and private school puts on an adult. And I don't think it's not that you shouldn't have respect for an adult, but I think they so ingrained in them that this person is trying to catch them in trouble or is trying to, get their, I don't know. It's just a different dynamic where public and private kids, when they're in a group effort where they're maybe saying a verse to you, a Bible verse, they're more timid or they act out more.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you can think of that?
Yep. So I have another question
Okay.
that I see on the internet often in all the little different groups and
All the chats.
all the chats. Is it so people who are interested in homeschooling, they ask, should I pull my kid out now or should I wait until the end of the year and just start, in the summer or start next fall? What's your opinion?
I guess in my mind, are you wanting to homeschool and your child wants to homeschool? Or do you have a willing participant? Because sometimes parents are like, we are just so done with the public school and they're homeschooling next year regardless. But the child's like, I love public school and I don't want to homeschool. If there was a 3 weeks left of school year, I probably would let them, because they're not going to learn anything in those last 3 weeks anyway. It's all, their field trips and field days and all that jazz. So I might let them finish it out. But if they're being bullied, it's a bad situation, I would have no hesitation. I would pull them now. It's just, I would kind of just end it. I tend to think it's best just to end it. But if you have that where the child's not sure they want to homeschool, I might let them finish out the year and give them the deschooling over the summer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more of a just pull the kids. I guess if they really want to stay, they could. Being this early, I feel like it's pretty early in the semester still. They just started the second semester. Well, I don't know, did they?
January, probably.
I would say it's still, you still have a good amount a chunk of time to, if you were to finish, it's still a lot of time to go through.
Yeah, if it were now and the child wanted to be homeschooled and we were ready to go, and there was a situation, maybe there was a situation at the school that was pushing you to homeschooling, I would have no hesitation to pull them now. And I probably wouldn't start them till fall.
Yeah.
But we would do field trips and we would explore what we want to do next fall, what we want to learn. I'd hit all the spring book sales and maybe I would see if I could tour some of the co-ops that maybe we wanted to get involved in the fall. I would be taking that time to research. And if my child was old enough to research, they would be researching it too.
Yeah, go with you.
Yeah, go with you, but also well, do you play in the band? Do you want to play in the band, the homeschool band? Let's go check it out. Let's go figure out how much it's going to cost, all of that.
It's never too early to pull out and it's never too late to pull out.
Right. Now, we have a dynamic here in Michigan because we have state funding. That's something we didn't really touch on. Hybrids have been, since COVID, the hybrids have really started to take off. What is your opinion? Would you, if you were a brand new homeschooler, would you start with a hybrid to get your feet wet and have that guidance? That's what so many people want. Oh, to them, and it's the best of both worlds. The kid still goes to school. Mom gets some me time for a couple days a week. They have direction. All their books are provided. Their curriculum's provided. There's a lot less research. But I know you and I didn't have the option of hybrids. But nowadays, do you feel like that would be a good avenue?
For some families, it may be. For me, no. No, there's a lot of opinions about hybrids. I think that the hybrids have really changed the way people look at homeschooling, and it's really changed people's commitment to homeschooling. And there's also you're accepting funding from the state. So I know some people aren't comfortable with that. So those are all things to look into,
We did not have the options of hybrids. They've only been, would you say they've been around since about 2020 with COVID?
You and I did a homeschooling fair out in like Lake Orion, I feel like. But I feel like there was a OVA. Was that what it was called? I feel like OVA was there, and that was pre-COVID.
Okay. So I was just trying to remember the timeline of them because they really haven't been around forever. But I feel like they kind of hold the parents' hand a lot, but yet I also sometimes, I see a lot of people come out of them too because they are bound to the school year. They're bound to their curriculum. They're bound to, it becomes more restrictive than some families want.
And I'm not educated in this, so now, is OVA different than a hybrid where the kids are going to an actual location 2 to 3 days a week, or was OVA?
OVA has both options.
Okay.
They have the hybrid option, but they also have where you can just take electives through them.
Okay.
But then you are a part-time public school student. You are not a traditional homeschooler. So anybody that takes any sort of funding for their school is a part-time public school student. You are no matter what. So if you're taking funding for the hybrid and they're paying for most of your curriculum, it is what it is, but you are a part-time public school student and that school is getting funding for your child. You are being tracked through the system. You're not a solo, off-the-grid kind of homeschooler. But OVA does have an option where you can just take electives through them. And you can take things like fencing and horseback riding. And I don't even know. There's a billion options of things they can do. But that is something that, I don't know. So there's arguments both ways for that. So it's not something we can get into here at this very moment. It would make it way too long. But that is an option, the hybrid schooling.
Okay.
I see it has changed a lot of traditional homeschooling, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad.
When I came into homeschooling, homeschooling had already been legal for many years. Well, maybe 10-ish years.
Yeah.
A little bit over 10 years. But it really was, what can I do to help with my child's education? How can I be involved? And I see it maybe switching. Like, who's going to help me? Where can I take the kids?
Mm-hmm. I need some me time.
Yeah.
Where traditional homeschoolers in the past, there was no such thing.
Yeah.
There was no drop-off programs, none of that. But we should do an episode on pioneer homeschooling days.
Hide under your bed if anyone knocks on the door.
Yes, exactly. But
all right. I think that those are my questions for you.
all right. Excellent. Well, we'll see you next time.
All right, sounds good.